You're listening to the Sass Says podcast. I'm your host, Christy Rocha, also known as Sass. I identify as a woman, a wife, and a mother. That should tell you a lot already. And over the last few years, I've learned the value of talk therapy. I have seen how my inner work not only enhances my own well-being, but also my marriage, my parenting, my relationships. And in fact, you wouldn't be hearing this right now if it weren't for the work I've done. My mission is to debunk the misconceptions and stigmas around what therapy is and who it's for. Let's normalize working on our mental health and seeking help when needed. We've all heard of self-care, self-help, and self-love, but do you often wonder how to actually make it all happen? I do. You'll hear strategy-based conversations with professionals, as well as inspiring and validating stories from women who are just like you and me. Think of this podcast as the weekly therapy sessions you didn't know you needed, with a dash of sass, a lot of vulnerability, and me, relentlessly asking, but how? Hello. All right, today I am joined by Beatrice Tokayer. Beatrice graduated from McGill University with a degree in psychology, but quickly realized her true passion in interior design. She completed her interior design studies at the Institute of Art and Design in New York, along with a separate certificate in AutoCAD and SketchUp. Her own son's sensory needs fueled her curiosity and passion for designing spaces that help children live happier, healthier, and calmer lives. Seeing a greater need for sensory interior design, Beatrice has made it her mission to help families create home environments that allow every individual to express their true selves by being bold, refreshing, and tasteful, while also delivering on the utmost comfort and functionality. Beatrice grew up in Montreal, Canada, and currently lives in New Jersey with her husband and 3 boys. Yes, okay, so Beatrice shares more details on her incredible design business, designing sensory-friendly spaces for the whole family, but especially for our kids. She also shares some of her motherhood story, from postpartum depression to her kids' ADHD and sensory processing disorder diagnoses. She also shares her personal growth story from growing up and moving to several different countries, being a child of immigrant parents, to how all that impacts how she parents her kids today and how she takes care of herself. So as always, stay tuned after for my final thoughts, and here's Beatrice. Hey Beatrice, so nice to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
We've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to get right into it. Let's start with this fascinating work that you do, BRT Interior Design. You specialize in creating sensory rooms. Why? Why get into this work? What drew you to it?
Well, it started with my own kids, and my middle child, who was born early at 36 weeks, never hit his milestones. And I knew from the age of 9 months that there was something different. He could never sleep well, and I could just tell. And so from the moment that he turned, when he was 18 months, actually, is when I started to really see certain behaviors. And we had enrolled him in early intervention, PT, OT, speech. He had a shadow, ABA therapy, everything.
Wow.
And one day I looked at his room, and it was a beautiful design that I created. It was light blue at the bottom, and it was dark blue on top with stars. And then he always told me, he goes, "I don't like these colors. I want you to change it." And I was like, no, I designed this. Like, you're not
You're a
changing
baby.
it.
Yeah.
No, what do you know? I'm a designer. And then I approached his OT and I said, "Can colors trigger a child?" And she said, "Absolutely." And that kind of it was like a light bulb, like an aha moment for me, where I was like, oh my God. And so then I started to look into lighting, color, furniture placement, and how the senses, how it affects a child. So I immersed myself in this, and I painted his room, and it was like a DIY project where I just redid his room, and it made a really big difference.
Really?
I put a diffuser with lavender scent. I did a whole bunch of stuff. I decluttered it, and I got to know him. And then after that, I was like, I've just been doing regular design, but this is something that's really needed. And I don't think people know that their children can really be affected by this.
Hmm.
And so then I changed my other son's room and my third son's room. And, it makes a really big difference. And since then, I've just been so inspired to help others. So now when I help others, I design regular spaces and sensory friendly spaces. But with the sensory aspect in mind, if they don't have children with special needs or whatever it is, because I truly believe that every child can benefit from this and every single person can benefit from this as well. We all have our needs. So I'm very passionate about it. And oftentimes when I help other parents, with sensory spaces, I also give advice as a mom because I've been through it all.
Yeah.
So it's a very fulfilling job.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So paint color was one thing, color. What other types of things could be triggering in a room?
For example, some children may be visually overstimulated, like my son.
Okay.
Where that was way too much for him. The pattern was just like it was too dark, too busy, too much in a small space.
Okay.
So what did I do? I painted it a very light cream color. I didn't paint it white. I didn't want to make it sterile. I just
Yeah.
wanted to tame it.
Okay. Okay.
Some kids are understimulated and they actually crave like a mess or they crave a busy pattern, but you don't want to make their entire room busy. So you'll focus on one wall that's busy.
Okay.
I had a
Okay.
client yesterday and I told her she's one child she has doesn't like, any mess or anything like that. And she has a daughter she has a very messy room and she had dolls everywhere and they were organized, but she had a lot of things in a room. And I said, is your daughter kind of like a mellow, tame type of child? And she said, well, she's lazy, if that's what you want to say. I was
Mhm.
like, you see, she craves this visual, stimuli. She craves this mess. She needs it. So if you empty her room, it's actually going to make her feel uncomfortable. It's very
Wow.
interesting. And kids tell you a lot. You just have to listen to what they say.
Okay.
And it's not always listening with your ears. You have to just feel them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting. So we could also, I'm thinking like a particular like feeling of a rug or a blanket could be something that you might want to change, or not enough soft feelings. And I don't know, like I don't know. Okay. All right. Let me, because I'm having a hard time not thinking about my own kids and wanting to ask you all about my own kids. But you know, the one thing that is coming to mind, and I'm just gonna ask it, when it comes to shared spaces for them, like I'm thinking of my playroom and I'm thinking of my daughter who likes a very like she likes control, but it's like a controlled mess. Um, and my son just sort of is like that like bulldozer kid that comes in and knocks everything over. Like any advice on how to like handle a shared space and not necessarily their own bedrooms?
So I call it an organized mess.
Yeah.
Like it's a method to their madness. They know where everything is. And
Oh
if you
yeah.
move it, you're
Yep.
in trouble.
Yeah.
So what I like to do is actually create stations
Okay.
where, let's say your daughter, does she like art?
Yeah.
Then I create like an art station and, put her stuff there and organize it nicely. And if
Mhm.
he's like a bulldozer and he likes to run around, then he's got his station somewhere else. And
Okay.
so not separated, but everyone's got a space. So it's not overwhelming when you walk into the basement and all the toys are kind of everywhere, because that's overwhelming for little kids,
Yeah.
whether they have ADHD, sensory processing disorder, special needs, anything. Kids need structure. So they have structure in school and they do very well with that. So when they
Mhm.
come home, all of a sudden there's no structure, right?
Yeah.
And when they walk into a playroom, they want to know where to go. So
Mm.
if there's too much, then some kids get overwhelmed and they just shut down.
Mhm.
And some kids will just kind of, empty out the bins and then there's a mess, they play with whatever and then they leave. But
Mm,
if you create stations, then it's much more organized. It's easier for them to also stay focused because they can move from one place to the next.
okay, that makes sense. Okay, okay, thank you. Um, since you, really honed in on this specialty, is there anything about the work you've done with your clients that has surprised you in any way once you really started getting into it?
Um, Not surprised, but it's more like pleasantly surprised
Mm,
at how much they actually needed it and
mm,
didn't realize how much they needed it.
mhm,
And it's not just playrooms, it's bedrooms and also common areas for the family because when a child, whether a child has is feeling uncomfortable in their body, whether it's ADHD or sensory processing disorder, it doesn't matter. So we're treating the symptom. We're
mm,
not treating what they have. We want to make them comfortable. We want to help them self-regulate. And when you do help them, the entire family feels better, feels
mhm,
more comfortable. So when a child feels that way, you don't want to send them to their room and say, go to your room. No, you have common spaces like a TV room and things like that that you have to think about. And a sensory space doesn't mean that everything has to be muted and
mhm,
neutral.
mhm.
And, it's not like that. It's customized to the family and to the child. So I was surprised at how much positive um feedback I was getting from it.
Mhm, mhm. Whether it's what you, observed with your own son or with your clients, like, what are the types of either behavioral or emotional changes that you've seen, your clients have seen in their kids after, you've beautified their space and made it sensory friendly?
So, for example, some kids come home and they have the heebie-jeebies, they just like feel like, because
Like,
you go to
antsy.
school and then you
Yeah.
come home and then you need this transition period, right?
Mm,
So you have all this extra energy. So then they just go to the basement or go to their room or just get that out.
mhm,
Some kids need to color and they just need to do their own thing on their own. And so that really helps a lot of families. Well, I definitely noticed that they're calmer.
mm,
They're not like all over the place. They're a little bit more grounded.
okay.
They have a place to go.
Mhm,
On the weekend when it's raining or it's cold, you get cabin fever. If you know that you can go somewhere and just play and have fun, then you feel better. It's kind of like going to the gym.
mhm,
So they just feel calmer, grounded. They can sleep better.
mm,
They're
mhm,
able to self-regulate. If I, redesign their bedroom, they like their room and
mm,
they feel empowered because they're like, they took care of me. They did this for me. So they
mhm,
actually like going into their room. It's their space. And you did it according to what they asked. It's customized for them. So they
yeah,
feel special. Kids with special needs, whatever special need you want to define it as, they may feel different. They may feel like they're different from the other kids. They may have low self-esteem. They may feel like you're separating them, and making your child feel like you love them the same as your other kids, but every child is loved differently is very
mhm,
important. So they feel like you give them that appropriate attention.
mhm, mhm. You said it when you were talking about your own experience with your son, you know, you said you really got to know him. And, you know, what are some ways that we can start to get to know our kids in that way? Like, I'm trying to think of how I would even go about what might actually work best for my kids. And maybe 3 and 5 is too little, I don't know, but, like, what are some of the ways that you start to figure out what is most appropriate for your kid in their spaces?
Well, if you're working with me, then, I would come and I would ask you a question about their routine and the morning routine and the afternoon and what they do, you as a mom of your kids,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
you're the best advocate for your kids. You know, you think that you don't know because we're talking about this and it's a new topic for you.
Yeah.
You know. And after this, you're going to go and spend time with your kids and you're going to listen to them in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll notice things that they do in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, for example, my son, when he has a tantrum, he goes into the bathroom and he locks himself. So he needs that space.
Mm.
Then he comes out. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My other son needed a swing for a long time.
Mm.
So a lot of it in the beginning was trial and error to see what worked and what didn't. Some
Okay.
things didn't work, and that's okay
Mm-hmm.
because it helped me to hone down on what my kids need. But you listen in a different way because then you're aware of these sensory sensitivities that all kids have, and some outgrow it and some don't. So when you help to kind of satisfy those needs, they feel more comfortable and they can actually outgrow it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. In just hearing you talk and basing some of what I'm about to say off of, the questions that I send out before the show, you strike me as someone who has done a considerable amount of self-reflection, self-work. I know you've done a lot of therapy you mentioned, but is that fair to say? Like, you just seem to have a very just in the answers that you've given now, just you cut through the the drama and it's like, like when you just said like what your kid needs. Like that's, I don't know, it's a very like self-aware person, and I'm wondering if you would agree with that, and if so, what type of self-work have you done on yourself, and what kind of education have you done to kind of get to where you are now? I mean, that's sure that's like a loaded question, but anyone who's been on like kind of like seems to me a self-development journey is like, I'm always interested in the actual like hows and what you did.
That's a very loaded question.
Bullet
Yes,
points.
I am very self-aware and I mean, I have a background in psychology.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Um, and
It's helpful.
I've always found psychology very interesting and people watching and behavior and yeah, it's fascinating to me. Um, but my self-awareness and my emotional intelligence has kind of come about from past experiences of childhood where there wasn't appropriate communication in the home.
Mm,
My needs were never met.
mhm,
Um, and growing up, you were able to differentiate. Somehow, I was able to see my friends and their parents and what they gave them versus what I got. And I was like, there's something different. And
mm,
somehow in college, I put myself through therapy and that kind of worked and was on and off. And then I don't know, I just kind of did the work and I did therapy for many years. Oh, I know when it started. I had postpartum depression after my first son.
mm,
And I didn't want to go on medication. And, it was in bed. I couldn't get up. And it was like a few months. It was like 4 months or so postpartum. And my husband said, you like, you're not the same. And I said, I went to the doctor and I said, I can cry on cue.
mm,
And so he said, all right, take medication. And then I started therapy again. And once I took medication, it kind of lifted off that cloud,
mm,
but I was able to just not only get through it, but just kind of push through it.
mhm,
So it's been a journey of working on myself. Um, and it's been very empowering to do that. And what I focus on a lot in my daily routine is um, being positive and not being perfect
mhm,
and, apologizing to my kids if I have to
mhm.
and treating them like little humans and not like I'm the authoritative kind.
Mhm,
And there are days that I yell at them,
mm,
but it's a journey. And if I'm happy, then they see that,
mhm.
So I just I don't know if I'm answering the question
Yeah.
properly, but it's just it's been slowly like accumulating and reading books and more books and
Mhm.
all that stuff.
Yeah. How old are your boys now?
8.5, 7, and 5.
Wow.
And God knows it has been an extremely difficult journey, extremely. And, I did not have an easy childhood and adolescenthood, growing up. And it's been very challenging. And college was really challenging. And my husband has a heart issue,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
then my 3 boys are extremely challenging. And my middle son, was born with all these issues. And my older son also has ADHD. And I could say, why me? Why is this happening to me? But I'm saying life gives you, these lessons, and life happens the way that it's supposed to happen. And I could cry, or I could just say, hand it over and I'm just going to deal with it, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm. I heard you share, I'm gonna made notes kind of going back on what you just said, but I listened to another interview you gave, and I heard you share that you're a child of immigrant parents.
Oh,
Where
you listened to that one?
Yeah, I did. Where are your parents from?
So my dad's family's from Argentina. My mom's family's from Romania. And I
Wow.
was born in Israel, and I moved to Canada when I was 9.
Wow. And then when did you move to Jersey
I moved almost 6 years ago.
from Canada?
No,
Oh.
I moved to Boston
Oh, wow.
for
Okay.
work um like 12 years, 11 years ago.
Wow.
So I've been, around quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Where have you liked living the best?
Actually in New Jersey,
Yeah?
Lee. Yeah.
Oh, don't tell my husband that because he still gives me a hard time about living here.
I I'm close to the city.
Yeah.
I'm I'm an extrovert. I have energy. I like the city, and I
Mhm.
like that I can leave the city,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I don't know, I feel settled here.
Yeah. What about your childhood do you think now makes you super equipped to be the mom you are, be the business person you are? Like, what do you take from having a childhood where you have got immigrant parents, you're moving around a lot? Like, what about that makes you actually, I'm guess I'm getting at like any superpowers come from those experiences.
Um, well, what I've learned through therapy and reading books, and I've been reading these amazing books about, there's a book called How to Break the Habit of Being Yourself.
I think
Heard of it?
that's on my list. Yes.
It's it's mind blowing. And it's one of the books that I've read where it says your past does not define you. And if you say, "Oh, I'm, the way I am because my parents did this and this to me," no, that's when you were little. You're able to change that if you want
Mm,
to change it. Basically, I looked at what I didn't get,
mhm,
and I wanted to change that.
mhm,
And I looked at what I was missing as a child, and I wanted to give that to my kids.
mm,
Immigrant parents, and also my parents did the best they could.
yeah.
That's something that that people need to understand about their families, is that they did the best they could.
Mhm,
Um, but my kids, I wanted to be a different parent.
mhm,
And I wanted to communicate and talk about feelings and talk about
mhm,
what's bothering them. And
yeah,
so, I will model for them a lot.
mhm,
If they are frustrated and they throw something, and I ask, why did you do that? Then they'll say, because I wanted you to get me cereal. So then I'll say, Mom, can you please get me the cereal? I really didn't want the other one. So I'll just
right,
kind of like phrase it for them
mhm,
and teach them what to say.
Mhm.
And when you come from a different background, I mean, first of all, you have the language barrier, you have the culture shock.
Mhm.
Um, you don't fit in,
Mhm.
clothing wise and looking different. And you have to get really good grades because, depending on what culture you're from, but, you better come home with good grades.
Mhm.
Otherwise,
Mhm.
and it's just very different.
The pressure to get really good grades, you mentioned starting therapy in college. Is that part of perhaps like the anxiety and the pressure, the overwhelm to seek help? Do you make that connection there?
Well, I used to freeze during exams.
Oh,
I went to McGill
okay.
and I got really good grades in high school. And there was a lot of pressure to do very well. I was very good in math and I loved psychology, all that stuff. And McGill was really, really hard.
Mhm.
And it was this pressure, from my family growing up. Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to be?
Mm.
And I said, I don't know. I want to be a nurse like you, mom. And no, 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 there's too much blood in that. So I was like, okay, so I don't know. And so I was like, I'm going to be a dentist. Okay. And then they got focused on this. They got obsessed with this idea of being a dentist. You have to be a dentist. You have to be a dentist. You have to be a dentist. So then I went and I ended up, I used to freeze and during exams and feel stupid. And
Mhm.
then I said, I want to go and major in psychology,
Mhm.
and I did. It was very interesting, but still I would freeze during exams
Mm.
and I just felt stupid. And so I actually took myself to the therapist in campus and I got like a diagnose, like evaluation,
Mhm.
and they told me that I had generalized anxiety disorder,
Mm.
which kind of taught me about myself,
Yeah.
and I don't know that I really did have that, um, because I'm not anxious now,
Mm.
but maybe at the time I did, you
Yeah.
know. Oh, and the other pressure, the immigrant pressure is you don't need medication. You can do this on your own.
Yeah.
And taking
Even
medication,
talking to someone, even therapy, I think is like, wait, we don't do that, you know, with
yeah.
certain cultures and things. Yeah.
I just felt like I was going to explode. Living on your own. I was paying for college by myself. I took out a loan. I was paying for everything. Um, and I felt like I was going to explode. I felt like I needed to speak to someone.
Mhm.
But it was like an eye-opening journey.
Yeah. 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 I really didn't start until I was pregnant with my second. And it wasn't until, you know, I started that I, in hindsight, realized that I had postpartum depression and anxiety with my first. Like, I just had no idea that I somehow got through all the doctor's appointments and all the things without anyone going, hey, maybe she needs some help here, or like maybe something's not right. What did what did postpartum, what did it manifest for you as? How did you feel it? How did it show up for you?
um you get this like okay. So wait, just to go back for a second, I've spoken to some people a lot of people, because I'm very open about my experience, because if I can share, then other people will share and people won't feel judged and we're all in this together. So I share openly, not about everything, but about this stuff. And a few women have said, I think I had postpartum depression, but I never did anything about it, kind of like you. And I'm like, if you felt bad, like, why didn't you go for help?
Mhm.
What I felt was literally like a heavy feeling in my chest. And
Mhm.
I just wanted to go to bed. And also intrusive thoughts, which
Mhm.
was the scariest part, where it's just controlling you. You can't get out of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And once I took medication, I was like, I actually feel the best I've ever felt, you
Yeah.
know? And now I want to get out of it and feel better.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I think mostly with after my first. it was mostly anxiety, and I really didn't I just thought, like, this is new parenthood. Like, you worry about everything, and you're unsure of what you're doing, and no one really was talking to me about postpartum anxiety. They were mostly talking about depression, and I also my baby didn't sleep very well, and so it was like, "Oh, it's just sleep deprivation." Like, there were a lot of things that myself and the people around me were able to excuse or were able to justify based on the circumstances or based on this what it is to be a new parent. And um certainly after my second was born, he was born February 2020, right before lockdown and everything. And through that, I experienced similar things that you mentioned, like the heaviness, the wanting to get in bed, I always talk about it as being almost a feeling of like having static radio in my forehead. And that to me, I was like already with a therapist, with a psychiatrist at that point. So that was great. But um, I don't know. Yeah, similar to you, it's like if i- if in my experience there wasn't a doctor going, hey, maybe this is postpartum anxiety, like then we need as women, as moms, need to be talking about it so someone can maybe identify themselves in our story and push harder for help.
But even if as a mom, it's really hard because being a first time mom, some people don't have the parental support. Some people don't have their parents. Some people have older parents. Some people's parents aren't involved in their lives. Even if it's really hard and you're foggy and you feel depressed and anxious and you feel like you can't go on, why not take medication, even if it's for 6 months
Yeah.
until you're out of it? What is the big stigma about taking antidepressants?
Yeah.
So many people need it and they won't take it and they're stubborn. And why?
Yeah.
You're going to be a better person and the people around you are going to feel happy that you're happy. It's going to improve everyone's lives. So why not? Like, we're not meant to suffer. I'm not
Yeah.
saying this easily, just go get meds. No, you need medication and therapists, and you need to be, under the care of professionals. But why? Why make yourself suffer? Motherhood is so difficult.
Yeah.
You gain weight. Some people, I had a hard time breastfeeding, and you're like, but you feel guilty if you don't breastfeed because then, making milk, it's like gold. And if you don't make enough milk, then you're depriving your child. And how could you give your child formula? And you
Mhm.
also want to lose the weight at the same time, and you want to go back to yourself, but you feel it's just
It's a lot.
why?
Yeah.
It's there's so much.
Yeah. Well, I will say for me, I didn't, you know, I didn't know, like, when it came to meds, I was intimidated by them because I didn't understand them, and I never had to understand them before. So, I had the feeling of like, "Oh my gosh, is this, like, am I gonna be able to come off?" Like, I didn't know, and now I don't really care if I ever come off, honestly, because they really just help me function,
Right.
so I don't care. But you kinda have to go through that processing because, like you said, there is so much stigma and there is so much judgment and a lack, I think, of information out there that when you're left to your own devices, especially when you're you're feeling depressed or anxious, it took me a while to just even be like, "Oh, is this depression?" You know what I mean? Like I didn't know. I just didn't know. And yeah, it's awful. It's a shame actually, because you're right.
When
Just
when
helps.
you go back for your 6 week
Mhm,
checkup, they
mhm.
give you like a questionnaire. Have you
Yeah,
been feeling sad? Check here, check here. Like,
right,
no, that's not like how you address it.
right.
You need to talk to somebody. It should be almost like mandatory that a social worker or someone comes to your home and talks to you.
Yeah,
And I don't know, I feel like I wasn't properly equipped. So
yeah, same. Yeah, I've been saying that too. I think, we have a 6-week physical checkup, like, let's have a 6-week mental health checkup, like, yeah, because I filled out those forms and no one really said boo. And I was also, I think, not not terribly so, but I've heard from a lot of other women that if you are feeling the things on that form, you're not always comfortable just checking it off on a form. Like, there's fear, there's
Yeah.
uncertainty, there's shame, that, like you said, can't be addressed on a form, needs to be addressed like human to human and
Yeah.
talking.
Also, if you fill it out in a form, you're kind of like declaring I'm
Yes.
unwell.
Yes. 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 Yes.
And a lot of moms are like, I could do this. I'm fine. It's
Mhm.
hard, but I'm fine.
Yeah.
Whereas it's okay to say, I'm not fine. I need more.
Yeah.
You know, my husband was very involved because he's just that type. Some dads just aren't, and some dads don't have the option and they have to go to work.
Mhm.
Um, and so the moms are just alone at home. And when you're alone with a baby, like I felt like I was gonna crawl, on the walls. It was just
Yeah. Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, I want to talk about, you said something really interesting in um your notes to me that I always ask, here you are, a mom of 3 boys, you have this great business, you have, a son 2 sons, I guess, with ADHD, one with a sensory processing disorder, and I ask in the questionnaire, like, what do you wish more people knew about what your life is like or what you go through? And you said something so interesting that you said, "I don't wish anything from other people. I understand that they simply can't get my situation because I've never been exposed to it. I didn't understand things before I had kids. It's just a matter of acceptance." And I love that, and I think that is the first time anyone has answered that with, like, nothing. And I don't know if you have any more to say on it, but it was so worth it to me to say it on air because yeah, the acceptance piece, like, how do we get to the acceptance piece? Like, how did you come to that?
um Honestly, I come from, again, my background was very critical, judgmental, very strict. And I had to work to kind of rid myself of judgment and all that. I was actually very sensitive to
Mhm,
judgment, criticism. I'm not anymore. And I've worked through that. But I used to, again, doing internal work, I used to look at people and you'd say like, oh my God, that baby is so loud on the plane. Like, how can the parents just let it cry like that? And then, you have a baby on the plane and your baby cries and has like a poo explosion. And you're like, oh my God, I am that person.
yeah,
And you realize I just didn't know what they were going through. And
mhm,
also just um, I don't know where I heard this, maybe on a TED Talk. I listen to a lot of TED Talks, and somebody said, when you drive, just give people the benefit of the doubt, right?
yeah,
When somebody's driving and they cut you off, maybe there's an emergency, maybe they just didn't see you, or maybe they just cut you off, but
yeah,
you probably did the same thing to someone else. So what someone's doing on the road, you're probably doing also. And so it kind of puts things into perspective. Like, for example, if someone's having a bad day and they're rude to you, you don't know that they had a bad day.
right,
You don't know that something happened to them that morning and they lash out at you. Let's say somebody like on the phone or a cashier or something. You don't know that they had a bad morning. Maybe they had a fight with their husband and they're rude to you. It's on them, it's not you. And maybe she had something happen to her. And so once you put yourself in that position and you're like, okay, she was rude. Let's not make it about me. Then you're kind of starting to accept that everyone's got something,
mhm, mhm,
you know,
yeah,
and people don't know what I go through because they just haven't been in that situation. And the people that do know what I go through because they have very similar situations, then we just get each other, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah, you said, like, to take the emotion out of it.
Oh, that's been internal work that I've done recently in the last like few years, like three,
Mhm,
4 years, to just try to not be emotional.
mhm,
For
mhm,
example, if a client doesn't want to work with me, it's not because they didn't like me.
right,
Either we didn't click, which is
right,
okay. It's
right,
okay if somebody doesn't click with you,
Right.
or my services, don't apply to them, or it's too expensive. And it doesn't work. And
Right.
I had to work at it, and understand that part.
Yeah. Like we're not taking anything personally, you know? It's like this isn't personal to me and like the core of who I am. This is just a circumstance in
And
life.
I was the most emotional person, before that.
Mhm. Mhm.
I used to get offended, but that's how I was raised. You're offended.
Yeah.
Um, and now it's a lot more, it's a lot calmer. Also doing work with my business coach, who taught me, who's amazing, Nancy Ganzikoffer,
Oh, okay, cool.
who talks about women's confidence. And she just, women, we tend to be like, and then he looked at me this way, and then he said this, and then they said they were going to call and they didn't, and just take the emotion out of it.
Yeah.
And so you kind of like, it's kind of like CBT,
Yeah.
it's CBT, where you
Mhm.
just like stop it right there. Like,
Yeah.
no. And it was like eye-opening.
Yeah. Nancy's amazing. Nancy is like and she that's totally like I can hear her actually just be like, "Stop."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um you also said something that you've learned through your, motherhood experience and with your son is that you said it's not my fault that my kid has special needs, and I think that that is such a it's so deep, but it's not something we talk about enough that like anytime our kid is struggling or anytime our kid is going through something or anytime our kid has a challenge, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, we take it on so much as parents as like, what did I do to create this problem for my kid? And I would love to hear your perspective on that and kind of your experience grappling with those emotions.
I mean, have blamed, so I have blamed myself my whole life,
Mm,
feeling guilty for everything. And that's something that I had to work through.
mm,
Um, and in some ways, it taught me that, even with my son, I was thinking like, what did I do? Is it my fault? Is it because I had sushi when I was pregnant? Is it because I had that one glass of wine? Is it because I did this, I did that? And doing the work that I do now, because every day is work, right?
mhm,
Every day we work on ourselves, because if you want to work on yourself, you're going to be better,
mm,
right? So every day you have to put in the work, to be confident, to, be better. And he was born the way he was born, and my other son was ADHD, which is like, by the way, he's got ADHD that's inattentive, explosive, behavioral, like that's the other side of, and that's not fun either.
mhm,
um
mhm.
but I didn't do anything to cause that.
Right.
Even if it's in my genes, like I still didn't do anything. Now I'm doing the best that I can to
Mm,
help them. So saying it's not your fault, it just kind of liberates you a little bit. Like, all right, let's help these kids. Let's
mhm,
help them be normal human beings and grow up to live in this world. And they will have stuff when they're older, because everybody's got something. And I'm going to teach them to go to therapy so that they can work on themselves. Because truthfully, I believe everybody should go through therapy, whether
yeah,
you think you have issues or not. Everyone's got something.
yeah,
We should all work on ourselves. So, we're doing the best that we can.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, and, I jotted down as you were talking, like, every day we work on ourselves, and I feel that so deeply right now. I feel like the last 2 to 3 years especially have been, like, just, like, in the weeds with all of the self-development and learning about myself, and I wonder for you, have you gotten to a place where although every day you're there's work to be done, have you gotten to a place where it doesn't feel like, "Ah, we're doing more work today?" Like, have you gotten to a place of ease with it where you kind of, like, know what you're doing and you feel like you've got some solid ground? Because like, I'm looking for that. Like, I'm okay to work every day, but it's like I'm only now just starting to feel like doing the things that I know make me feel good. For a long time, they were a checklist of things to do that I had to force myself to cross off. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, do you see where I'm going? Like, where are you at with it? Are you like, these are the 5 things that I do, and I know I have to do them, and they make me feel great, and we move on? Or is it like, ugh?
No, I feel pretty good. I feel good. And some days where something happens and I feel, oh God, I should have said that better. Like I try to step out of that.
Mm,
But it's a lot of repetition of positive thinking and a lot of talking to yourself. And even in therapy, I learned a good enough mom is good enough. You know that? You don't have to be the best of the best and the excellent all the time
Yeah,
because you need balance. You need
right.
time for you, you need time with your husband, time with your kids, time for work. It's a lot of, different roles,
Mhm.
right? And so I'm at the point now where I'm calm. It's
Yeah,
better, you
yeah.
know, and a lot of repetition. You look at yourself in the mirror and you have to say, I love you.
Mm,
And we have to love ourselves in order
mhm,
for other people to love us,
mhm,
and to feel like you can give to your kids. So you need to fulfill that part of you. And so, for example, what feels really good for me every day, I go to the gym. I prioritize that sometimes over my kids. I make arrangements. I ask my husband on Sundays, can you watch the kids? I need to go to spinning. If he can't do it, I'll get a babysitter.
mhm.
But and they know mom's going to the gym. And so now, I have a bike upstairs and now my kids will be like, Mom, I'm going to go and bike for 3 minutes. I'm like, wow, you're so strong. Like, because I want to be strong like you. You
Aw.
emulate this strong mom,
Yeah,
and sometimes, I mean, I haven't cried in a long time, but sometimes you cry, right?
yeah.
And it's okay to cry in front of your kids. And sometimes they're like, I used to cry because it was just like really overwhelming.
Mhm.
And they would say, Mom, why are you crying? And I'm like, it's just hard. And
Yeah.
then my husband would come in the room and they're like, Mom's crying because it's just hard, you know?
Oh my god, that's sweet.
But it's just sometimes you just have to let it out and just don't hide your feelings.
Yeah, yeah. I think I think I'm coming to the other side of it, but I think the last couple of years, which is another thing, like, you don't expect it to take years, right? But, like, it does. I think the years thing is, we're told all the things, right? Like, for you, like, exercise, movement, and that's a big one, like, drinking water, journaling, meditating, getting out in nature, socializing, all of the things, but what I'm getting at is that it's actually taken me years to figure out which one which of those things, and then taking it further, within those things, what things within those things, like, actually feel good to me. It's like the trial and error of, like, "Let me try this. Okay, this someone's telling me I should do this, and I try it and it doesn't work, so then I change it up," and it's like, it takes, at least for me, like, it's taking years to
Well,
really, like, figure that out.
how about just one day at a time? And how about not having this expectation of, I need to be better, but just a journey? I did Pilates for 10 years. Now Pilates doesn't work for me anymore. Now I do
Mm,
heavy weight training. And so I look at it as like, okay, this was one phase. And you discover things about yourself. I really like heavyweight lifting. Before this show, I was at the gym doing a dance class. I would never think of myself doing a dance class, but you know what? It's this other side of you and, releases endorphins. And I was like, I need to do that. And it's just like, you feel like you're sexy and you're dancing and no one cares how you dance. You can dance amazingly well or
uh-huh.
horribly. And, just like accept that you just go through different phases in life. And And it's fun because if you did the exact same thing all the time, you'd
Yeah.
be bored,
Yeah.
right? So you just kind of discover certain things about yourself.
Hmm. Anything other than the gym that you really try to prioritize, and I guess I'm looking for any other like tips, tricks, or advice and things that you prioritize and how you actually make them happen.
In terms of,
Taking care of yourself.
um, yeah, I do the things that, moms say, like, oh, I'm too busy for like taking care of my skin. It's
Mm,
very important
mhm.
because who's looking at you every day? You you
Yeah.
want to love yourself, right?
Yeah.
Get I mean, I'm not that good about getting facials, but the skincare routine is important. um Eating good foods,
Mhm.
that's important, you know and
Yeah.
I love chocolate, so whatever. you know
Yeah.
Chocolate is a food group, so who cares? But basically, thinking that if I'm happy, then the others around me will be happy,
Yeah.
and that you're modeling all this for them.
Yeah. When I'm hearing too that, you know, coming off of what I said of it kind of being a checklist, what I'm hearing and feeling from you even virtually is that it is really that you love yourself and you're taking care of this person that you love, which just happens to be yourself, which I
Right.
think is like actually a very hard concept for I think particularly moms to sort of like wrap their brains around.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can be very critical of ourselves, you
Hmm.
know, because, kids just teach us. Kids just make us go through this journey.
Hmm.
The whole experience of being a mom and wife, and it teaches us so much. And your experience with your kids makes you get to know yourself better. And you're like, okay, I don't like that I said that. I'm not going to say that next time, or like, oh, I love that I tell my kids that I'm proud of them a lot because I was never told that when I was a kid. So there's certain things that are feel good, and certain things that you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Hmm.
But you have to love yourself. And I didn't always, but I've
Yeah.
kind of eliminated the negativity, you know, and
Hmm.
you're in control of that. You could do that yourself.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I in this book that the book that I'm listening to actually on tape, How to Break the Habit of Being Yourself, it says that people would rather stay, it just change is very hard,
Yeah.
and change is uncomfortable. So even if the situation that you're in is negative, people would rather stay in that situation because
Hmm.
it's familiar rather than get out, be uncomfortable, and breathe fresh air.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. And I'm not like I'm not an expert or anything, but I want to say too that in one of the books on this shelf that I read, it was like it's also a survival response in your brain of like, oh, this has changed. We don't know this. And so it's like you actually resist it at first because your
it's
brain and
foreign.
body are designed to just keep you alive and keep you safe. And
Yeah.
change, even if it's like changing just your routine, it's like, whoa, we don't know what this is. And so it kind of you have to work through it emotionally and, you know, biologically.
Yeah, and it's scary.
Yeah.
And I have to say that once you find the right therapist, and even saying like I'm in therapy,
Mhm.
there's a stigma to that.
Yeah.
But therapy, like when you find the right therapist, they help you live a better life, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, it's just important. So it takes a long time, but we're able to do that work ourselves.
Well, Beatrice, I appreciate you so much and all of your insight. And in my mind now, your sort of emotional growth and intelligence is like goals. So thank you for being here and sharing so much of your story and your life. And I just appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Okay, so are you looking around at your playroom right now? Because I haven't looked at my playroom and my kids' bedrooms the same since this conversation. The one thing that I can always do immediately in relation to creating a more sensory friendly space is purge. The clutter makes me loopy. I can only imagine my kids, and Beatrice is so right. I notice that when there are too many things in the room and absolutely no order or structure, my kids don't even really want to go in the playroom. So in the time since this conversation, I've made a much bigger effort to purge the stuff. I've donated things. I've brought toys and activities to other places, like maybe my parents' house or our beach house, and sort of just upgraded all the toys that we had there for them to play with when we visit. And I've even just put a lot of things in storage bins and put them in the basement closet and close the door. Because you know what? We'll switch them out later. There's just too much going on. And this is not something I've done since the conversation. I did this in the last few years. But toys that make too many noises or have too many sounds, or gosh, if they have the combination, they're gone. No, too much going on. Anyway, I've also thought a lot about this in relation to myself. I can definitely get that feeling of sensory overload, whether it be through touch or sound, even feel sometimes. I never thought I'd be a person that wanted a weighted blanket to sleep with, but I do, and it helps. And I think it's just worth considering. Look around your house, look around your spaces. How can you make it more comfortable? How can you make it more functional? My mom has this saying that Architectural Digest is not coming. No one's coming to your house. No one is coming to your house to photograph it. No one is coming to your house to judge it. It has to work for you, and it has to work for your kids. Are your kids comfortable? Are they happy? Are they calm? Something worth considering. And if you have questions about this, please reach out to Beatrice. She would love to help you. My kids are almost at the point where we're ready to kind of upgrade their rooms to that next level of development, next level in age, and I will definitely be considering all of the things when we go to redo those rooms. Anyway, Beatrice, her expertise was incredible, but she also had some just amazing points that I want to reiterate about motherhood. The first being that you are enough. You are a good mom. Most importantly, you are the right mom for your kids. The second being that we are not meant to suffer. It's okay to say, I'm not fine and I need more, or I need help. The third is that it's not your fault. If your kid is having difficulties, if your kid has a diagnosis, if your kid is just having a challenging season, it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You're listening to this. So therefore, you want the best for your kid. All right? So many words of wisdom to think about. Thank you, Beatrice, for sharing your perspective and your expertise. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Sass Says is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. This podcast is meant to be educational and not meant to replace professional therapy or professional medical attention. To learn more about today's show and what's new in my world, head over to sasssays.com. Thanks so much. Talk later.